Hello everybody, welcome back to Biology Bookie. It's me Pooja and let's start today's topic. So today's topic is the root. The first question arises in our mind is that what is the root? So let's understand that thing first. Root is the part of the plant that absorbs the water, minerals, nutrients from the soil. Okay, so the part of the plant that is above the ground that forms the shoot system, and the part of the plant that is present inside the ground means that is underground that forms the root system. Okay, so firstly we want to know how many types of roots and root systems does exist. So the types of root is the tap root system and second one is the fibrous root system. Okay, first type of the root is the taproot system. Okay, so the taproot system is mostly visible in the dicotyledonous plants. So in the dicotyledonous plants, from the seed the radical part we have, and from the radical the root originates, and that root that is originating, that is forming, that is the primary root. Okay, and when the primary root further divisions and development happen in that root, so the lateral roots and secondary roots arises from that roots. So we can call that two roots, that secondary and the tertiary roots. So the first is primary root and secondary roots and tertiary roots. This whole of the root system forms the taproot system, and we can see this taproot system in the mustard plants. Now let's understand what is the fibrous root system. In the fibrous root system, in the similar way, from the seed the radical part is appearing, okay, in the downward direction, and from that radical the root forms, primary root, and this is short lived and it is replaced by more other roots. So this many number of roots forms the system that is fibrous root system, and we can see this system in the wheat plants. Now we have another type of roots, that is adventitious roots. Okay, so in the adventitious roots, the root is forming from the other parts of the plant excepting the radical part. So these type of roots are refers to the adventitious roots, and examples of adventitious roots are grass, banana, example. Now what is the function of the root? Root, I have already told this thing. What does root do? So the function of the root is absorption of the mineral, nutrients and water from the soil, and there are some other functions also, like storing the reserve food material and making the growth hormones, right? So now this point is clear to all of you, right? This is the primary root, I have told this thing. This is the primary root, because this is appearing from this radical part. Okay, and we have another type. What is that? Fibrous root. So fibrous root is from the base we have many number of roots, right? So this is the example of fibrous root system, and this is the main root, and this is the example of primary root. And adventitious root we have understood very clearly. Now let's understand this diagram of the root. In this structure of the root, we are explaining the number of zones that are present within the root. Okay, so we have these types of number of zones, means we have 4 number of zones within the root. Okay, and from these we can easily understand the development of the root in easy way. So let's start from the first, root cap. This portion is the root cap. So what is the role of the root cap in the root structure? Let me explain this thing. Root cap occupies the distal part of the root, and it represents the unique set of the initial derivatives that are displaced distally away from the meristematic zone. Now what is the function of that root cap? See, we can take an example of humans. Why does human wear that cap? So similarly, in that way we can understand this role of the root cap. Why does we wear? Because to protect our head from the sunlight. So that's why the main role of the root cap is the protecting the meristematic zone of the root structure. Another functions of the root cap is the enable the gravitopism and the secretion of the compounds that helps the root structure to penetrate into the soil easily and to mobilize the minerals and nutrients. Now the second zone of the root is the meristematic zone. Okay, so what is the role of the meristematic? Firstly, when this word come in our brain, so what it defines? It defines that meristem is this is the tissue. This meristematic zone of the root lies under the root cap. Okay, and what it contains? It contains the number of cells, the cluster of the cells. They have the characteristic polarity to and further divide and further differentiate into the mature tissues. Okay, so these tissues make up the root part. So the cells surrounding the previous cells, this means we can say initials. Okay, so the cells surrounding the initials have the small vacuoles, and these vacuoles expand and divide rapidly. Okay, so in the meristematic zone of the root, what are the cells doing? There the cells are dividing multiple times. Now let's understand the third zone of the root, that is the elongation zone. Okay, so the elongation zone is the site of extensive and rapid cell elongation. So here, if let's we can take this thing. Let's suppose the few cells are still in the phase of division, but they are present in the elongation zone. Okay, but when they elongate, so their rate of divisions is decreasing to 0 and increasing their distance from the meristematic activity. So it means in this zone the cells are doing elongations, means they are elongating, they are increasing in their size. Okay, so now the next zone is the region of the maturation. So in this zone the cells are not dividing and not elongating, means elongations has been ceased and they are reaching to the mature state. So the question comes in our mind, yes, the cell can mature so earlier, but it will never receive that mature state until they reach that maturation zone. So this is very important for the cell to reach that maturation zone for acquiring that mature state. So in this zone the cells are in the mature state. Now you can see the cells are in the mature state and they are not dividing and they are not elongating. So that's why the lateral organs, means these root hairs and lateral branches and lateral roots are appearing in the zone, means are forming in the zone. That's why these root hairs are present in the region of maturation, and this is the region of elongation where the cells are elongating, and this is the region of meristematic activity where the cells are dividing. And the role of the root cap is to provide the protection to the apical meristem from the mechanical injury. So now the question came in our mind that the root is developing, but who is controlling this development? What is the cause of that root development? Means according to the demanding environment, root is growing. It is adapting various changes in its structure, right? So these changes are happening because of the root apical meristem tissue. Means the meristem tissue means that is responsible for growth. Okay, so that's why in the root they have special type of tissues, that is root apical meristem tissues, and they present at the root tips. So who is regulating that these root apical meristem tissues? Those are auxins hormones, and these auxin hormones are formed in the shoot part of the plant. So now let's understand the modifications of the root. For some other functions, like for storing reserve food material, so the root develop its structure. Like we can take example of adventitious roots of the sweet potato. These roots get swollen and then store food material, and the taproot of the carrot and turnip. These are also the examples of the roots that modified their structure for storing reserve food material. Now the second modified form of the root is for supporting, as a supporting structure. Means we can take example of banyan tree. In the banyan tree we have the hanging structures. Those provide support to the banyan tree. And what are those? These are the prop roots. So these roots providing the support to the banyan tree. And we can take another example also, like the stems of maize and the sugarcane, and from the lower nodes of the stems the roots are producing, means the roots are growing. That refers to the stilt roots, and these roots also provide support to that stems of those plants. Now thirdly, the root is modifying into the structures. Those structures are helping the plant for getting the oxygen from the atmosphere. We can take example of the rhizophora plant. These plants firstly grow in the swampy areas. Okay, and from these areas the root grows in upward directions. Why? Because they are helping the plants to getting oxygen. They are getting oxygen from the atmosphere and providing that oxygen to that plant, and that's why we call them pneumatophores. So these are few examples for the modifications of the root. I hope that today's topic is clear to all of you, and please do comment in the below section how did you find this video, and let me know if you have any doubts and queries related to these videos. I will be happy to help you. That's it for now. See you and bye.